Canada has long been a favored destination for Indian students. How will the diplomatic rift impact Indians studying in Canada and aspiring to study there?
Relations between India and Canada hit rock bottom. And amid this, many Indians are left wondering how the diplomatic fallout will affect immigration, work and student visas. The fallout has left Indian students and their families concerned.
अब अगर कनाडा गवर्नमेंट वीज़ा देना बंद कर देगी स्टूडेंट्स को तो वो बहुत ज़्यादा कंसर्न हो जाएगा जिनकी एप्लीकेशन स्पेशली इन प्रोसेस है जैसे हमारी ट्यूशन फीस ऑलरेडी सब गई हुई है वहाँ पे और काफ़ी सारे मेरे फ्रेंड्स हैं जिन्होंने ऑलरेडी इनटेक अपना कंप्लीट कर चुके हैं दे आर अबाउट टू फ्लाई तो अगर इनकेस गवर्नमेंट ऐसा करती है वीज़ा पे कुछ भी अगर स्टॉप लगा देती है तो बहुत बड़ा कंसर्न हो जाएगा क्योंकि ऑलरेडी स्टूडेंट्स ने GIC पे की है.
With Canada being one of the top destinations for higher education for students, many fear the diplomatic escalation will impact their future plans.
मैं सितंबर नेक्स्ट इनटेक के लिए जाऊंगी 2025 में और मैं अभी आईएलटीएस की प्रिपरेशन कर रही हूँ और मेरा स्टार्टिंग से टारगेट था कि मुझे कनाडा ही जाना है और मैंने बैचलर्स प्रोग्राम पढ़ना है और मैंने कॉलेज वगैरह भी सब ऑलरेडी शॉर्टलिस्ट करा हुआ है बट अब जैसे मैं ये न्यूज़ सुन रही हूँ तो मेरे को थोड़ा सा डर लग रहा है कि आगे क्या होगा और फ्यूचर का क्या होगा.
Parents of the students who study at Canada's universities voiced the same concerns.
ये दोनों कंट्रीज की डेवलपमेंट के लिए बहुत ही ज्यादा गलत है. कुछ बच्चे जो आगे सोचते हैं अपना उन्होंने करियर सोचा हुआ है हम वहां जाके सेट होंगे पेरेंट्स का पैसा लगा हुआ है फैमिलीज का पैसा लगा हुआ है तो ये सारी पॉलिटिकल इश्यूज के कारण ये सब कुछ स्पॉइल हो रहा है जो नहीं होना चाहिए.
Canada typically welcomes around 5 lakh international students each year, with Indian students making up nearly half of that number. Travel experts confirmed that the situation for Indian students in Canada has become more challenging.
पिछले साल से इन्होंने कुछ काफ़ी वीज़ा स्टूडेंट्स को कम देने शुरू कर दिए रिजेक्शंस ज़्यादा कर दी शुरू. वहाँ पे उनके इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर जो फैसिलिटीज़ हैं वो बड़ी कम है जिस हिसाब से स्टूडेंट्स वगैरह लेके जाते थे 2-2.5 लाख प्लस इमिग्रेशन भी कर रहे थे 2-3-4 लाख लोग सड़कों पे रहना शुरू कर दिया अपने पंजाबी. आप पीछे मैं गया था टोरंटो गया था तो देखा वो ब्रिज के नीचे या फ्लाईओवर्स के नीचे अपने पंजाबी टेंटिंग लगा के वहाँ रह रहे हैं.
With India expelling 6 Canadian diplomats and announcing withdrawal of its High Commissioner and other officials, uncertainty shrouds Indian students and visa aspirants. Bureau Report, India Today.
I want to go across now to Maruf Raza, who's not just a strategic affairs expert, but also a top educational consultant for students pursuing higher education in countries like Canada and the UK. So, Maruf, explain, one, what impact is this having on the turnaround time when it comes to Indians applying for visas? What's your advice currently for those who are hoping to study in Canada, but given this breakdown in ties, is Canada still a country they should be looking at, or should they really look elsewhere now?
Well, under the circumstances, you could do both. Continue to pursue your applications and look for options elsewhere. The reason is that you never know because Indian students really calculate their success in terms of every year where they were at an education institution and how much educational information they picked up and how they progressed up the ladder. So if you're suddenly told that your doors are going to get closed, it causes a sense of panic among students. But having said that, the second thing is that the Canadians have a large source of revenue coming in from Indian students in Canada. And you cannot close that door very easily. Canada may be a G7 economy, but Canada cannot continue to take its economic options so arrogantly as they are doing right now. Because remember, there were some 4,27,000 Indian students that went there last year. This year, by reducing the figures, you're cutting it down by 35% this year to the numbers who are expected to get a visa to go there. And next year, add another 10% to that. So over a 3-year period, you'll have almost 45 to 50% of student numbers getting a visa to go there. Now that's grossly unfair because studying in Canada is much cheaper than studying in the UK or the US. Canada costs you about 20 lakhs a year. UK costs you about 30 lakhs a year, and the US almost 50 lakhs a year. So students work on shoestring budgets to go abroad. The second thing is that students are being asked to get a certification and a kind of affidavit from the province that they're going to go and study. So, for example, you're going to go to Toronto or Vancouver, where there's large Indian populations. You have to get from the local province a kind of affidavit confirming that you are welcome to study there. But if you're making it so difficult, nobody has the energy to go and get an affidavit for students, and the students themselves are on a roadblock as to what is to be done.
Kamal Sibal,
And
do
finally,
you
and most
think, do you see
important,
things change if there is a change in government? Because frankly, you know, an education is a 4-year process, right? A higher education, and then if you want to study further, do an MA, then that's even more. Now, students can't decide on the basis of what happens in the next elections, whether the Liberals get voted out, the Conservatives come in, things could change. It's very, very dynamic. I mean, what would be your recommendation for those who are in the process of thinking about going to Canada, Mr. Sibal?
Well, firstly, as far as I know, the government of India is not stopping them from going to Canada for education. If there are some difficulties because the missions are not functioning properly and processing will not be easy and this will affect their visas, that is a collateral fallout from the political problems that have got created. So I think the students should take some lessons from what is happening in terms of their future choices and wait for some time till the situation clarifies a little bit, or otherwise look for alternative destinations. In any case, I think Canada also wants to reduce the number of students they want to take every year. And therefore, the previous situation where Canada was much more open is not going to continue even if the Conservatives come back to power, I think. So the students are in a difficult position. It's a human question. It's a human problem. But they have to take difficult decisions, whether they want to wait for a visa to be given or whether they should look for alternative destinations.
Maruf, in all the students coming to you for counseling, are you seeing a change in trend, a reluctance to go to Canada, questions about where should they go, and what's your top choice in terms of what the best potential options at the same price point for higher education are?
well, students that come to go for advice to go abroad are going to be clearly affected by the news that is doing the rounds. I mean, you look at the papers today, all the papers, top headlines, half the front page is all devoted to India-Canada relations now being on the downward slide. The second thing is that students that go abroad, their parents play a very important role. And the parents would like to know that if I make an investment in year 1 and 2, they cannot be suddenly returned back to India with all the investment going up in smoke. So the Canadian government has to give an assurance to students that if we've given you a visa, we've given you admission, then we will honor it for the period that you will do your degree there. And the third and most important thing is, you know, the Canadian government is now going to deny spouses and family members visas to come in and work there. For people who go to study abroad, it's not just the degree, it's the opportunities that the family also gets with them. And if you deny the family members those opportunities, you're doing a great disservice to the student community, and you're doing a great disservice to the good, hardworking, tax-paying Indians who are already in Canada. Not everybody is a Nijjar. Not everybody is part of the various Khalistan groups. I mean, I would suggest you should read a book by Tim Milinsky. It's called Blood for Blood. It talks about how the Canadian government has inculcated this concept of hardline Punjabi terror in support of these groups. These guys go fly into Pakistan, they get visa-free entry, and from Pakistan, they are cultivated to go into India and the base becomes Pakistan and create the problems that we are having in
Daniel,
Punjab.
but what I don't understand is why is Trudeau so soft on China? I mean, if I read reports about the CCP wanting to set up these de facto police stations in different parts of Canada, interference in terms of funding, interference in terms of candidate selection and pushing those candidates. Why isn't he pushing back harder and more aggressively against China? What holds him back?
Well, nobody is...
Mr. Bodman?
Okay, yeah, well, this is the question of foreign interference here. Like, the Chinese, the CCP, actually has power in Canada. So one of the reasons why I know Indian foreign interference is a mostly bogus story is in order to infiltrate a country, you need organizations in that country to infiltrate through. Okay, so for the CCP, you have Chinese language newspaper stations or media outlets or cultural centers, a bunch of different things. Okay, so you spend a lot of money, you infiltrate these organizations, you get some of your people into the board, you slowly push out the moderates over the years, and then through money and intimidation, you now control this media outlet, you now control this cultural center, you can then set up police stations or whatever in the country, right? That's how you then low-level infiltrate through. There are no Indian institutions, Hindu institutions in our country. Like, yeah, there's one, there's Kona, it's a few years old, it's a subsidiary of an American thing. It's just, like, again, and all the Indian Hindu organizations, I know all of them, okay? It's like 5 people, okay? It's not anything. Like, there's really nothing to infiltrate here through the government. So India and their proxies and, you know, the people, the native-born Indians, let's say, who would be Hindu and sympathetic to it, they have no political organization and no political real vote bank power in Canada. So you can supposedly punch them as hard as you want, and there's really no blowback, right? But in the terms of the CCP, well, if you go after the CCP, right, you're going to get attacked by these cultural institutions. They're going to call you racist. Their proxies in academia are going to say this is racial profiling, blah, 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 blah. You know, again, the media stories, you're going to be boycotted from these cultural centers. They're going to actually attack you. So because there is a stick on the other end, the establishment or the politicians fear that stick. India has no stick. That doesn't even have a carrot. Has nothing. There's no real institutions to even infiltrate through to then go into government. So in a sense, it's a lot easier to kick India because there's no organized political blowback to that.
Okay, so I think you've explained why Canada has more leeway, why they're able to interfere and yet get no pushback, and how India doesn't have the levers to ensure that the Canadian government can't just basically